ghost stories. Here's one for you. Hello. The story I'm about to tell today was sent in by Om. Om says, I'm someone who believes in ghosts, spirits, deities, sacred things, and all things mysterious. To say I'm superstitious wouldn't be wrong. Perhaps because I'm a business owner, I rely on spiritual support to boost my confidence. So whenever there's a place said to be sacred, possessing power and granting miracles in various aspects, a close friend and I would travel there. This story I'm about to share happened just a few days ago. I have to mention that I have a close friend in my group who shares the same beliefs as me. This close friend is named Tan. Tan works as part of a team, so Tan and I often travel together, no matter where we go. Recently, I learned about Rahu's transit occurring this September. As someone who believes in astrology, I planned a trip to worship Rahu at a temple in a northeastern province. Let me briefly explain that astrologically, it's believed that when Rahu transits to a new zodiac sign, as it will in September, it affects the horoscopes of certain signs, including those born on a Wednesday night like myself. Therefore, I had to participate in the Rahu worship ceremony for auspiciousness. And of course, I always invite my friend to join me on these trips. But this time, Tan wasn't available. He had already promised his family that he would go to worship Rahu with them. So this time, I had to travel alone. I planned to travel during the long weekend to avoid the crowds. My shop operated as usual during the preceding 4-day holiday, and I closed it to give my employees time off during the long weekend. I set off on the 8th to attend the Rahu worship ceremony on the night of the 9th. I planned to stay in Nan province for 2 nights. I didn't book a hotel in advance, thinking that since it was right after a long holiday, there shouldn't be any issues with accommodation. I followed the Google Maps directions, aiming for the temple, and planned to find accommodation nearby. I arrived safely at my destination around almost 3 p.m. The atmosphere inside the temple was quite lively, despite being a weekday. I asked a lottery vendor where I could find accommodation nearby. The vendor replied, "Look around, there are plenty of places to stay. You'll find them everywhere. This is the city center." The lottery vendor's response eased my worries about accommodation. I didn't open Google Maps to check because the main point was that I was very hungry. I planned to eat at the nearest shopping mall and also buy necessary items. I had forgotten my clothes bag in the car. I also realized I forgot my phone charger, and by then, I was almost 100 kilometers away from home. I ate at the shopping mall and bought the necessary supplies. Afterward, I went looking for a hotel. I asked a motorcycle taxi driver to guide me since I figured a local would know the area well. I specified my needs, requesting a place not far from the temple where I would attend the Rahu worship ceremony. The motorcycle taxi driver led me to a hotel. Its condition was somewhere between old and new, but personally, I thought it leaned more toward old. The driver told me this hotel was close to food and not far from the temple. I agreed. I approached the reception counter, and the staff informed me that rooms were available on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. I chose the 3rd floor. Then, the staff handed me the room key. Receiving the key, I felt a chill. I had a strange feeling. But due to exhaustion from driving, I reassured myself that it was nothing, and that I was probably just feeling apprehensive being alone in an unfamiliar place. Usually my close friend would be with me. After receiving the key, I went to get my belongings from the car, not forgetting to grab my bag of amulets for peace of mind. When I reached the 3rd floor, the surrounding atmosphere felt eerily strange. I tried to convince myself that I'd been consuming too much spooky content and was overthinking it. When I opened the door, I smelled a musty odor like the room hadn't been used in a long time. I entered and inspected the room. Actually, I was looking for anything unusual. Odd objects, amulets, or anything that might be creepy or unnerving. Finding nothing unusual, I took care of my personal business. Exhausted from the journey, I threw myself onto the bed. I played with my phone for a while, browsing restaurant reviews and local attractions, just killing time. And of course, I didn't forget to check into the province on Facebook. Then, I drifted off to sleep. I woke up to the ringing of my phone. I saw the name Fawn and was surprised. It was my ex-girlfriend. Fawn and I broke up almost 5 years ago. I hesitated to answer. Then I remembered that Fawn was from the province I was visiting. I guessed she must have seen my check-in. I didn't know where she was because we broke up before I ever visited her home. The phone rang several times, but I didn't answer. I just lay there, staring at the name on the screen. Finally, I decided to mute the phone. Suddenly, I heard laughter in my left ear. It startled me so much that I jumped up. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was probably just my imagination. I took the amulet bag from the bedside table and placed it under my pillow, then turned off the lights and switched on the television for company. It was around 9 p.m. I lay there, reminiscing about old times with Fawn. As I was about to fall asleep, I heard rustling sounds from the overhead storage area. I looked up towards the source of the sound. There was something moving around up there. My first thought was, is that a cat? How did a cat get in here? I was annoyed and sleepy. I have to admit, I don't like cats. I've been bitten by one before, so I got out of bed to see if it was a cat or something else. What I saw was human hair protruding from the gap. I was terrified. My heart pounded erratically. I was sure I wasn't seeing things. The light from the television was bright enough to see the area clearly. The rustling continued. I backed away slowly, my legs trembling with weakness. Sensing something was amiss, I reached for my amulet bag under the pillow. When I looked back towards the storage area, what I saw became clearer. I have to tell you, what I saw wasn't human. The face of a young woman emerged from the storage area. My earlier suspicion was confirmed. It wasn't a cat, and it certainly wasn't human. What human could be up in the overhead storage? I was frozen in fear, tears streaming down my face. The face had a friendly, almost mocking smile. It jumped down from the storage area with surprising speed. I could see clearly now that it was a petite young woman with reddish-brown hair. Then the figure began to swell. I stood there, stunned and speechless, as the figure's expression changed from a smile to a scowling, bruised and bloodied face. I admit at that moment I was truly terrified. It was the first time I understood the meaning of being haunted by a ghost. The woman started wailing loudly, then vanished before my eyes. I swear on my honor I was completely sober. I hadn't had anything to drink besides water, and I wasn't dreaming. I hadn't even fallen asleep yet. As soon as I could move, I grabbed my phone and ran out of the room. I stumbled down to the reception counter. The staff were startled to see me, panicked and breathless. 2 employees rushed over. They took me to a quiet area away from other guests. I remember I couldn't speak coherently. I tried to explain what had happened. After a few minutes, I regained my composure and recounted my experience. I demanded to know why there was a ghost in the hotel and why I had to endure such a horrifying experience. The staff stood there, heads bowed, avoiding eye contact. Then one of them stammered that they hadn't seen anything like that since they started working there, even though it was an old hotel. They claimed there was no history of such incidents. I told them that if there was nothing wrong, then they should get my belongings from the room immediately because I was checking out. The 2 employees exchanged startled glances. One of them went to get the security guard at the front. Their actions and words made me suspect something was up. It took 3 people, the security guard and the 2 employees, to retrieve my belongings. I didn't have much. I could have gotten it myself. While waiting, I decided to call Fawn, my ex-girlfriend. She answered and asked why I hadn't called her and where I was staying. I told her the hotel's name. She reacted with shock, asking me to repeat the name. I said it again. There was silence for a moment. Then she asked who had recommended the hotel. I explained how I ended up there and told her about the ghost. She told me to come get her, but not to go into the hotel. I went to get my car and followed Fawn to her house. That night, I stayed at Fawn's house with her parents and her child. Fawn introduced me to her parents as a university friend and recounted my ghostly encounter. They were shocked. Fawn's mother said, "How could you stay there? Someone was murdered in that hotel. They say it's haunted." Just imagining the gruesome scene sent shivers down my spine. During our conversation, Fawn searched for information about the hotel online. The name of the hotel popped up, and the search results detailed a murder that took place over 10 years ago. A young woman had been killed and her body hidden in the overhead storage area by a man who had stayed with her. The killer had fled. The body wasn't discovered until a housekeeper noticed a foul odor coming from the storage area during cleaning. The description of the victim matched the ghost I had seen. I was certain that what I encountered was real, not just a hallucination. Even after so many years, the horror hadn't faded. I stayed at Fawn's house that night. After attending the Rahu worship ceremony the next day, I drove straight home. That experience taught me that I need to do my research before staying anywhere, or I might encounter another midnight horror. That's the whole story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be alerted when new stories are posted.